Okay, so we're supposed to be completing up chapter 6 and test out this week and start looking at 7. So we'll go ahead and start looking at 7 already. It's about Active Directory, and we've already done some stuff with Active Directory. Like we created our domain controllers. We set up contoso.com. We set up organizational units. We imported user accounts with the Powershell script. We've created shared folders and set permissions and stuff. And there's actually an Active Directory Lab 2 that is in test out, and that is just getting your Contoso domain created, which most everybody's done. So I'll just simply go and check your virtual machines, make sure you have a contoso.com set up with Active Directory going, and give you credit for the Active Directory Lab that's in week like 10 or 11, something like that, on Canvas. Now let's look at Active Directory users and computers first. Let's see, we've got contoso.com that we created. It's running off of server 1 and server 2. Any user account or anything that you add into Active Directory is replicated on both servers. That's for fault tolerance purposes. If one server goes down, there's still the other server there that has Active Directory running. It also helps with load balancing too. So we have no computers under computer. That's a good thing. We do have domain controllers under domain controllers. Servers, we created an OU for that, and we put our server 3. We also created a room number here and put our client machine into there. We did that for group policy, because you can attach group policies to organizational units. And we pushed out Google Chrome. We also pushed out to Map and Network Drive. Cool stuff like that. We also have a bunch of new users. Let's create a group so that we can organize these users. Anytime you have a user account, they should pretty much be assigned to a group. Most of the time you can think of a group as a role. Maybe you create a group for a faculty, maybe you create a group for superintendent, something like that. It makes it really easy whenever you have to run the superintendent off because some scandal and you hired somebody else in. It's really easy. That new user account can easily be added to a superintendent's group, and he instantly has rights to all the stuff the previous person in that position had. So let's go with creating a group. I'm going to click on New Organizational Unit here. I'm going to click on New Group icon, or right click and go to New Group. Now if you remember earlier, we created a group for sales earlier in the semester. And I said I always like to follow Microsoft's naming convention. If it's a global group, I like to put the word domain followed by, what is it? What are these new people? We'll just call them new for really creativeness, right? Domain new. So we don't know what they're actually doing, but you have several different group options and 2 different group types. I told you don't ever use distribution group. That's only for email. If you have an Exchange integration, you'd use the Exchange management tool and you'd be creating groups under there. They'd be creating the distribution groups and stuff. You really probably would not ever modify it under here. So avoid ever using distribution group. It's always creating a security group. Group scope, 90% of the time you're going to be creating a global group. Rarely would you create a local or universal group unless you're a really big company. So in general, just deal with global groups. They're the easiest to deal with. If you are a multinational company, yeah, universal groups and some other stuff will come into play. So, groups created. Let's look at different ways to add users I'm going to add this first user to that group using probably the most difficult way. I'm going to double click the user account. Go to the Member Of tab. I'm going to click Add, and I'll type in domain new. Hit check name to make sure I spelled it right and typo something. It should underline it when it's correct, and hit OK. Now this user is a member of 2 different groups, new and users, and I'll hit OK. Cool, huh? Now I'm going to pick every other one, starting with Allison, Angus, Benjamin, and I'm going to stop on him. I use the control key to individually select them. Were you able to do that using your control key? So now I can right click. Notice I had to right click on the blue, the highlighted section. I have people that come down and try to right click after they have something selected like that, and they're like, "It doesn't work, Mr. Goodman." I'm like, yes, it doesn't work. You have to use your highlight one, use your control key. No, let's see, I did it like that. And you have to have your mouse over the blue part. If you click somewhere else and right click, it's going to go away. So I have to be over the name, right click, add to group. And I can easily type domain. I'm going to check name and it'll give me a whole list, and I can click the right one here, like domain new, and hit OK. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to click on pick Plowright, Andy Smitten, and Alexander. So I'm going to right click and add those to the group. In the same fashion. I'm going to double click the group and see that the members are in the group. This is another way. I've added in all the way down to Benjamin Gibby. I'm going to add in Betsy Bowell. So I've double clicked the group name, went to the members tab. Now I can hit add, and I can add them by username. I'll type in Betsy, hit check name. I've typed in a unique enough information that it was able to find the user and underline it, so I can hit OK. Notice Betsy gets added to the group. Now how many ways have we done so far? We did it by the user, we did it by individually selecting, and now we've done it by going into the group itself and adding it in. You could also use Powershell. To add people in. There's another way. It's more of a selection way, about like we did before, but instead of using the control key, I'm going to click on the first person, Alexo here, that has not been added into the group. So having that highlighted, I'm going to scroll to the bottom, and how would I highlight all of them? All the way down to the bottom. Hold down the shift key and click the last one. And just in case you haven't done that before, I hope you've done something like that before. But if not, holding down the shift key and selecting the bottom option selects all of them in the row. I can now quickly right click and click add to group. Again, not to be over one of them that's highlighted, I could not right click anywhere else on the screen, or otherwise it would be selected. So add to group. Actually, I don't want to complete that. Did I? Yeah, I did. Sure. So all those users are added into domain new. So what is the benefit of adding a group? Let's look at applying permissions. So I'm going to go to shares under my file and storage services. I'm going to look this public group here. I'm going to go to properties of it. I'm going to expand out the permissions here. Click customize permission. Right now, domain salespeople have read and execute and write capabilities. Users on the system have read and execute, but what about these domain new people? Maybe I want to have them modify rights into this folder. I can quickly go add, select a principal, type domain new, and give them modify rights to that folder, and click OK. So that's why we would want to add groups. Otherwise, I would have to go add, and I would have to select principal name, and I'd have to type in everybody's name, 100 of them, and then click modify rights. That's not feasible, that's not manageable. So we did before, selecting all the users, adding them into a group, and then adding here, because going in and there's people in different organizational units too. So if I just type the first letter, else there's administrators, I have to figure out if they were in the new organizational unit. And I can't add multiple, I have to add them one at a time and hit OK, click the permission, and then go back and add the next one and click permission. So you don't ever want to see or have to deal with individual users. You should always see faces, the double faces here. See it? Double faces? You should not go in and you should not see something like that right there where you see a single face. That's rare that you'd want to do that. Even if there is just one superintendent at a school, you normally don't want to see his face. You want to see a group called superintendent or something like that. That way when, like I said, when he's fired or somebody else takes his position, or somebody else needs to act in his position because maybe he's in the hospital for 3 months, it's really easy to add somebody into the superintendent group and he gets rights because you'll see superintendent like right here. I won't have to make any changes to permissions in all the folders and files. I just add the user to the group. I'm going to take that user away, and now it looks better. I don't see a single face there, I see the double faces. I mean, sure, there's always times where you might need a single user, but it should be in extreme rare circumstances. And you have to think. You always have to forward think. What happens if this person sick, quits, dies, something happens? That's why we don't use user accounts. Let me give you some more tips. This person right here, let's do Betsy Bowell. Betsy Bowell, she quit the company. What do you do now? What is the best step to do when this person has left the company? What do you think? You have a couple options here. You could do nothing. You could change the password to something else. You could delete the account, or you could disable the account. Your best is probably to disable the account if that person has left the company. Because they'll probably replace that person, maybe. Even if the job position's been eliminated, who knows, it may be reinstated a few years down the line. And somebody may need to come back in. Plus all of their files and stuff, that they created, they have ownership. That account right there has ownership of all the files and folders. So if somebody does come in and take their position, it would be hard for them to access all of their accounts and stuff if you create a new account for somebody taking over somebody's position. So what I would do, if somebody come in and is going to take that person's position, I can rename the account. Who do we want it to be? Bobby Hill. He's probably old enough. That cartoon King of the Hill's been, yeah, he's old enough to get a job. Bobby Hill. So I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to pop up and go, hey, you change the full name, you probably want to change other stuff too. So it makes it really easy to modify everything, including the login name. I could then reset the password to something generic. I could tell Bobby Hill his new password, and he would log in and have to change the password, so it would be unique and nobody would know it. It'd only be him. This is lab purposes, so I'm going to uncheck that so I actually know what Bobby Hill's password is. And hit OK. I would then re-enable the account. And Bobby Hill could log in, and any files that the old person had created would be owned by this Bobby Hill. If you remember, there's a security ID, 128-bit security ID behind every user account. Global Unique SID. That never changed. We only changed the front end. Still a member of domain users. If they had a home folder path or anything, it would still be set to the old Betsy path name and stuff, but they would have access to it. I want to use Powershell. I'm going to get 80 user Bobby Hill and this security ID did not change when I renamed the user. I only changed the names for like SN, the name field was changed. So I only changed a few things. Look at the email address. That didn't change. I might have to go in and update that. But the key component of that right there is actually what is applied on a file or folder whenever you assign permissions. It does not apply the username. You type the username in there and it looks like that's what you're applying, but in the background Microsoft is actually writing the security identifier and go, hey, this security identifier is the owner of this file. That's why that you want to disable a user that leaves the company And then when the new hire comes in, rename the old account with the new hire's information. Especially if that person had files and stuff that you needed them to have access to. The administrative assistant's position for this building has always had a fairly high turnover ratio. So it's always been good to rename accounts and stuff. It also makes it easy whenever they log into the workstation. They log into it with their username and password, and it loads up the other person's profile, because it's still marked to that security ID, so you can see all the documents that they forgot to copy up to the server. Most of the time you always try to train your employees, put everything up on the server so we don't lose it, and especially if you change jobs, the next person comes in, they still get rights to like a secretary or administrative assistant share. But there's always stuff that they keep local, like bookmark files to purchasing sites and different stuff that's been done, and so it's nice to be able to just rename, and then when they log in, they have all the same desktop and settings the other person had. Any questions on that? Sometimes you need to create a fresh account, but keep that old account just in case you need to do something like that. You see this contractor? I see they have a description as contractor. Well, this is probably somebody that you're hiring in to do a temporary job. When you have anybody that's going to be hired in, even like a third-party vendor coming in that needs access to your network to do some work for a little while. I contracted in with Children's Hospital one summer. So when they create accounts and stuff, there should be some type of policy that you set under the account tab an expiration date. So if you tell them that this contractor is going to come in and work for a month, then I can expire it in an exact month's time, like on Friday, November 22nd, 2019, that account would expire. And if you're on Linux system, Unix system, any place that you're creating an account and you've got something that, there's going to be somebody that's only going to work for a certain amount of time, set an expiration. I created an account one time simply called test, put a real simple password on it, and gave that to a third-party vendor so they could log into our server and upload a file. The file was about 4 gig at the time, and our internet wasn't super fast back then. We didn't have a gig connection like we do now, and it took 3 days for them to upload the file. So after the 4th day, hey, the file's on the system, cool, now I can finally use it and install and do whatever I need to. I forgot to delete the test account. I didn't put an expiration date on the test account. About 7 months later, some botnet found it and hacked the system, because the username of test and the password of password was in a script somewhere that they tested that combination. So that was a bad thing for a little while. Added extra security, added on timeout settings or a firewall. If somebody tried to log in remotely and failed more than 5 times, it would put a firewall entry and block the IP address. It didn't do it for local logins, but remote login it would. Hadn't been had a hack since, and that was probably about 13 years ago that happened. But yeah, expiration date if you have temporary people coming in. Makes sense, right? Now that I explained my hack problem I had It's real easy to forget these people that come in temporary. Something else I could do, or I might actually want to use a user account, possibly. Probably not. K through 12. Lots of times the IT personnel, they just maintain the servers and everything. They don't maintain the user account rights and stuff. Although somebody that knows Powershell should be able to pull the like children's account out of a database somewhere and auto create them accounts every year. In the past, though, they had a librarian that would do that. We always had to go to the library and get a user account created so we could log into a computer and get to the internet and do English papers and stuff like that. So some schools may still do that because they may not have IT staff that can PowerShell code and stuff like that. So they'll have a librarian that either made the full administrator of everything. That's a bad thing to do. Or you can come in, maybe consult and set up a domain situation and set a librarian up. Let's see, who's going to be the librarian? We'll make Corey Bitt the librarian. So, they've got all these little rugrats, what we used to call them, in K through 12. And they need to create accounts for them. And you know, are kids going to remember their password? No. You probably have to reset it and stuff. They're going to screw stuff up. Accounts are going to have to be fixed all the time. So you as the IT admin, do you want to just sit for weeks at a time in the library fixing kids' passwords and creating the accounts and all of that? No. So I'm going to right click this OU right here. I'm going to pretend like this here is a bunch of school kids and Corey Bitt's the librarian for the elementary school. I'm going to go in here to Delegate Control for this organizational unit. It's going to bring up a wizard. I'm going to go next. I'm going to select a user or group. It's going to be this Corey Bitt person. Probably, like I said, I should have probably created something called Domain Librarian. Yeah, I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to go ahead and do it right. We need to do it right, not show a bad example. So I'm going to create a new group in here. I'm going to name it librarians in case we need to group them all together like the elementary and high school librarians together. That would make sense because kids normally go up a grade if they do well enough, and they will go from elementary school to high school. So I'm going to right click Corey Bitt and add to group Domain Librarian. I hit enter real quick because I typed in Domain LI and there was no other group that started with Domain LI, so it auto put that user in there. I'll double check Corey Bitt member of tab here and see that Domain Librarians and Domain New and Domain Users are all assigned. Now I'm going to go back to right-clicking on New, Delegate Control, clicking on Next, clicking on Add, add Domain Librarians in there, and hit OK. Yep, had to do that. I couldn't tell you about, don't ever use user accounts and then we go through and use a user account. No, let's do it right. Has to be do as I say and do as I do. It's like my driver's ed teacher was driving along. He just did some rolling stops. He says, okay, now don't do this. You actually have to stop when you drive. I'm like, yeah, that's good. So I'm going to go next on this screen. What do I want to delegate? The following common tasks. We have create, delete, manage user accounts, reset user passwords, enforce password change. I'm going to check that, and maybe create, delete, manage user accounts. If you didn't want the librarian to be able to delete, you might have to do custom and go next. Only the next on that one. Show permissions, general, property specific, creation, deletion of specific child objects. We'll check that. They need to be able to read, write, create, should read and write all properties. Delete's not selected. We don't need them creating computer objects or applications or contacts or documents. It gets a little bit too specific here. You don't need them to create groups. There's a lot of stuff that would need to be unchecked in there if you went that route. I'm going to go back. And I'm going to go back. And I'm going to go back and do the generic. They wouldn't be able to delete objects in any other organizational unit, like under sales or services or users or SO1 or anything else. They're only designated to new. So if you're going to do that, you'd probably only want students to be put into there. Your faculty and superintendents, management, computer accounts be all in different organizational units. So create your organizational unit so that if you do delegate control, they wouldn't be able to mess with here like other librarians' accounts and stuff. Those librarians probably should be moved out and not be put in with the students. So I'll go next and finish. So they can create users, they can delete users, and they can reset the user's password. At least that person can. Only to new. They will not have rights to sales or any other part of Active Directory. You'd have to install Active Directory users and computers management tool on their workstation and probably put an icon on their desktop or taskbar and teach them how to get in there and do the work. But delegation of control is the way to do, delegate administrative tasks, either to help desk personnel, to like the librarian. There's whatever situation you need. There's a million of them, and there's no way to go over all the scenarios. You just have to find the business situation that you needed to delegate control for. Any questions on delegating control? So, organizational units. They even have how to delete one, but you haven't gone through this yet. Let's create an organizational unit. A new one. Let's call it delete me. And I want you to delete it. Of course, you will get an error. I want you to, on your own, figure out how to delete me.
I had to Google it, but I figured it out.
Did you get it deleted?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I knew that there was a checkbox to uncheck for removing the accidental deletion thing or whatever, but I couldn't remember how to get to it. I had to Google it to find it.
So if you are watching this because you missed and you should pause the video and Google on your own, because that's really, that's what you run into problems like this, like, oh, I can't delete it. You got to figure that out, and that's good practice. If you can, after a time, figure out by researching Google, you're going to have a little bit of a problem with IT work. But I'll go ahead and show in this video. It's under View and Advanced Features. Otherwise, things are hidden when you click on Properties. So this Delete Me right here, when I go to Properties of it, there's several extra tabs that are added because I went to View and Advanced. And one of those tabs is the Object tab. And the Protect from Accidental Deletion checkbox must be removed before you can delete. So I've removed that. I'm going to turn Advanced Features back off so it hides the really critical parts of Active Directory. It does not ever need to be messed with. And now I can delete. I'll double check the name in this dialog box and won't quickly hit yes, and luckily the no is selected, so if I hit enter it would cancel it. It really wants you to go through a lot of steps before you delete an organizational unit. So that is how that it is deleted. When objects are deleted, they're pretty much gone forever unless you have recycling bin turned on. Older 2008 server, 2008 R2, you had to use Powershell to turn on a recycling bin. I believe 2012 or 2012 R2, they added Administrative Center, and I think we've already run this a week or two ago. I don't remember. Active Directory Administrative Center allows you to, doesn't look like we've done it. So Administrative Center comes up, I click on Contoso, I click on the Tree View tab up here at the top, and now I can expand out. And that organizational unit and any user accounts or anything that was inside of that could have been in there is pretty much gone forever. If you backed up Active Directory, there is a way to restore Active Directory and mark certain objects as authoritative. Then you restore it to a domain controller, and they can possibly come back from doing a restore. I've not been able to do that from 2016 onward. It's worked in older server versions, but 2016 onward, that's failed on me. And I got to reading, and all the online forums say you need to enable recycle bin because the legacy way of trying to restore and mark things as authoritative doesn't work very well anymore. So to enable recycle bin, you can't ever disable it from what I hear once it's enabled. It's a really quick and easy way to do it in 2016 server. There's simply a link over to the right side that says enable recycle bin. Are you sure? Once it's been enabled, it can't be disabled. All your servers have to be, I think, 2008 R2 or higher. You can't have any old servers in the list. I'm going to click OK. It will not function reliably until all domain controllers in DeForest have replicated the recycle bin configuration change. If you're a global company, that might take hours or days for it to replicate all the way around the world. It's probably already done it on ours, since both servers are running on the same virtual hypervisor host. So now I can close out or I can hit refresh and make sure the enable recycle bin is now grayed out. There's now a deleted objects folder. It's empty. If I go into my old Active Directory users and computers, there is no deleted objects folder. There is no recycle bin in this old tool. Okay, so where was that after that? Okay, so yeah, there's no recycle bin in this tool. This was created back when Windows Server 2000 came out, and it hasn't been updated since, so that administrative center is new. Let me go in and delete a user account. We'll go in here and accidentally delete the librarian. Who is the librarian? Again, Corey. If I delete the librarian, they're gone. So if they had, remember that security ID? Yeah, it's wiped off the system and it's marked never to be used again too. We can't recreate that user account with the same name. It's going to have a different security ID at the end of it. So you can never retrieve an account, even recreating with the same name and password. If they had encrypted any files on the system, the files are almost lost forever. Unless you've got the, hopefully the administrator set up as a recovery in that situation. But come over here to the administrative center. I'll refresh. This person ends up in the deleted objects folder. So the security ID and all of that information is still retained in this deleted objects, and I can restore. Now when I go back over here and do a refresh, I guess I'll have to hit F5. Oh, there we go. There's refresh. The person is now back in the list. That's extremely easy. Click one link to enable recycle bin, then if you accidentally deleted something, you can go restore it. That's very, very useful. And by default, it is not turned on. It was not a feature that came with 2000 server. It is something that came with 2008 R2, so it's not something that's auto-enabled. And that's because people may still have old 2008 servers running Active Directory. Or they'd have to go through a big process of upgrading all of the servers to a newer version of Windows, and then go in to upgrade all of the domains to at least the 2008 R2 or higher function level, and then raise the forest function level to 2008 or higher after all the domains have been raised. And then you could enable the recycle bin. So that's why it's still disabled by default. And using Windows Server Backup to back the system state and restore, that's a big, long process. You have to boot the server up in something called directory restore mode to restore the Active Directory state back in. And you have to open up a command line tool and remember exactly what the object was that you deleted, and type it in like cn equals Corey Borit, comma OU equals new, comma DC equals Contoso, comma DC equals com. You have to type something like that, big long string out, and say, you know, mark this as authoritative to restore. Is very difficult to do, and it failed. Any attempt I've tried to do a 2016 server and later. And that's where I started researching why cannot not authoritatively restore a single object. So I tried to do that as a lab. The first time we taught 2016 server, upgraded from 2012, and everybody's saying no, it doesn't work well anymore. You need to use the recycle bin. It could also have been that didn't have any patches on these systems. Remember we patched server 3? And when I did that lab, I don't think I'd done any of those cumulative patches and stuff yet. But in any case, I like the recycle bin to be enabled.
Yeah, because we enabled that on.
So user accounts, Karen's account keeps getting locked out. Because some service or something apparently tries to log in as her account and it locks it out. I think they said about 15 minutes her account gets locked out. something somewhere, running to their home computer, on her phone, on somewhere else. Something's trying to log in with an old password and locking her account out. Once an account is locked out, how do you re-enable an account? So account can only be locked out. We can disable an account, but an account lockout is because somebody's tried to log in. It's not something an administrator does. It's something a hacker or a bad service or something like that's done. So once the account is locked out, there's not a right-click enable or disable here. You actually have to go into the account by going into Properties, going under the Accounts tab, and checking Unlock Account. There's not really any way to know if an account is locked other than the user's calling up says, hey, it says my account's locked when I try to log in. You can set it to unlock after a time period, but you normally just keep it locked permanently, because a hacker's not going to call you up and go, I accidentally locked the account. Can you unlock it so I can try some more passwords to get in? They're not going to do that. So you just keep it locked out permanently, and that user will come in and tell you, hey, my account's locked. That'll alert you that something's going on. Maybe something's misconfigured somewhere. You can fix that service that's continuously trying to spam a login, or maybe you can see that somebody is from the Ukraine trying to break into the account for some reason. So hitting that checkbox and hitting apply will unlock the account, but there's nothing visual. It's always just right there that you can check it. I don't know if the account's locked or not, but I know when I click it and hit unlock, then yeah, it's definitely unlocked, and I can tell the user, okay, try to log in again. And if it gets locked quickly again, I need to start investigating where's the logins coming from. Other things on this tab, login hours. Somebody works at a place from Monday through Friday. So you give them the ability to, hit enter. Didn't want to do that. 7 a.m. to like 7 to 6 you want. And they work an 8 to 5 job, but in case they get there a little bit earlier, work a little bit late, give them that window and go, okay, you can log in during that time. They can't log in during the weekends or outside of working hours. That's a security mechanism that you could implement.
Somebody, and my job in Houston, someone went in and did that, and we were working extended shifts and weekends, and we couldn't log in. We're like,
yes,
we need in the computers for procedures, and we couldn't log in.
I have not set that for anybody in production before.
That's what I'm saying. We were manufacturing.
But
we were
I mean, not like production. I mean, in a production being real world.
Oh, in the real world.
I've only shown that in labs. I've never set that on anybody's account.
Yeah.
You also have log on to, where you can specify exactly what computers people can log on to. So you may have point of sale systems, and you only allow the workers to log into the cash registers. You don't allow them to log into the management stations or anything in the back room. So you can specify what exact computers people log into. Never set any of those on anybody's real account before, but you could do that. User must change password at next log on. That's normally checked when you have to reset their password, because you don't want to know what the password is. There's something in security called Non-Repudiation, meaning you can't deny that you did something because you're the only one that knows your password, and you've got certificates and stuff with your account. So if you administrator change somebody's password, that needs to be set so that they can't go back and like, oh, well, you logged into my account. User can't change password and password never expires is great for service accounts. Any program that runs on a computer has to be running as a user account. Some programs run as services like a web server, a backup server, antivirus programs, things like that. They authenticate. And some systems create their own account when you install them into a network server like the Windows server. Those accounts probably need to have those two checkboxes set, because if you implement a password rotation policy and you come up to your 180-day time frame and now that service account password is expired, that service fails. Your backup stops working, antivirus scanning stops working, a web server stops working, whatever it is, stops working because that account can't log in anymore. So those are useful for service accounts. And that's pretty much all you really worry about unless you get into some really advanced smart card logins or different type of encryption stuff. That's way beyond the scope of the class to talk about any of the others down here. So on Thursday, we're going to discuss sites. And I'm probably going to go ahead and talk some about user accounts. I'm looking at next semester. Have y'all signed up for next semester? It looks like LAN is only online. There's a lot of stuff you may not get that's being taught only online by somebody else. So we're going to go over user accounts. We'll go over home folder, which with Microsoft OneDrive and stuff now, and everybody doing cloud-based stuff, home folders are not, they're starting to become legacy, but you're still likely to run into them. So we'll cover a home folder, and I'll cover sites and services. I'll cover login scripts, and those were legacy too. Use group policy now instead, but I'll show you where they exist, and I'll show you where the LAN 2 class found a whole bunch of open stuff that they should not have been opened on campus a few weeks ago. Found everybody's social security number and really bad stuff like that. The name wasn't by the social security number, but students were smart enough to look at some other numbers that were in another file and correlate them with the social security number and go, hey, that's yours. I was like, well, I'll give you some credit for that. We already did rights delegation, and we covered pretty much groups. Computer accounts are pretty simple. We already did bulk adding in. So yeah, Thursday we'll do home folders and talk about sites.